Coming up on our Finding Better podcast is a story of courage, perseverance, and determination. Pam Warren is joining me. She survived the 1999 Paddington crash, the train crash in the UK, where two passenger trains collided at 130 miles an hour. And she's here to talk about her years long recovery and how, and here's the upshot, she learned to choose and design the life she wanted to live as a result of that terrible, terrible experience. An amazing story, lots to learn. She's a wonderful person. Here we go. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And this is where we share real lived experiences of people who have been there and done that. Because I found that in my life, sometimes the best path to success is to follow in the footsteps of people who have already walked it. And it's amazing. It's amazing. Today, we're going to talk about finding better when life changes overnight. And it can be changes from a loss, it could be changes from disruption, or in my guest's case, a change from a tragedy that she went through. And another title for this could be no matter how bad things get, finding better is always an option, right? So listen, this is for folks, and we all go through this, right? And this is that's what I love about my conversation with Pam is that we all go through unexpected changes. A lot of us are going through unexpected changes right now. So it's for listeners who are trying to create a better life after those unexpected changes happen. So, Pam Warren, welcome to Finding Better. Thank you
Hi,
for
John.
joining me.
No,
All
that's
right,
my pleasure.
good, good. So just real quick, um, we're going to talk about Pam's experience on what happens when life doesn't go as planned, and when, excuse my French, shit happens, and how people can rebuild their identity, their purpose, and direction after trauma or an unexpected change. And like I said, we're going through changes all the time, all of us, right? So Pam survived the Paddington crash in 1999, and this is where 31 people died in Great Britain, and over 400 people were badly injured. It was one of the worst crashes in the 20th century, and it happened when these two passenger trains collided head on, going at a combined speed of 130 miles an hour. And from that, Pam faced, as you can imagine, having been injured, a long road to recovery, not just physically, but psychologically and emotionally. And so she's here to share her story on rebuilding confidence, rebuilding identity, rebuilding purpose, all from starting all over again and learning how to find a way forward when, get this, her old life was no longer there. So I think we have a lot to learn from you, Pam.
That is a big build-up, isn't it?
Well, right? I mean, did I exaggerate any of it?
No, but
Right?
okay, that's a lot to live up to, but I'll do my
Well,
best.
it's you went through a lot. You went through a lot. So without going into the details of the crash, which I don't want to
Yeah,
have to, I don't want you to have to relive.
thank you.
Um, so start from wherever you want to start.
Okay, right. Well, yeah, it was um I mean, obviously it was a very dramatic thing to happen to someone.
Hmm.
You're minding your own business and you're getting on with your day and you
You're on
catch
a
a train.
train.
You're on a train, you're catching it into London to carry on with your normal day's business, and that happens. And the thing that, because it wasn't just the two trains crashing at that speed, there was a fireball. So I got severely
Oh,
burnt on top of the injuries. Um, so I was a bit of a mess and was in a coma for getting on for a month afterwards. And I was in hospital for 3 or 4 months. I've lost count of the amount of surgeries
oh.
I've had to have because they had to rebuild because I lost all the skin. I mean, this face is not my usual skin. It's grafted.
Well, they did a beautiful job.
Oh, thank you. You're very
I mean,
kind.
if you hadn't said, they do a great job when nobody asks you questions about it, right? And I wasn't
Yeah,
going to ask you any questions about it because well, they did they did a great job. I mean, so, yeah,
I
sorry,
had a
but
fantastic plastic surgeon, to be
yeah,
perfectly honest, and
wonderful.
I thank him for my face.
And
Um,
and and you became known as the woman in the mask, right?
that's right. Yes, to keep the grafts bubbling up and really scarring,
Oh,
that bubbled hypertrophic scarring. I had to wear a very hard Perspex mask on my face, and I had to wear that for 24 hours a day for almost 2 years.
oh no.
Yeah. But it did its job. It did do its job.
Yeah, yeah, but having to wear a hard mask for 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mind you, it's amazing. I mean, this is one thing I admire about the human body as well as the human spirit, but
uh-huh.
particularly we adapt really quickly.
Yeah,
So it was I it didn't take me long to get used to wearing the mask. I mean, yes, I looked weird and
yeah,
people would
yeah.
stare and point at me, but to be in the UK, because I became well known, because I decided to take on the government and the railway industry and tell them off about what had happened.
Good for you.
Um, I became known to the general public. So people were quite often noticing me, but then coming up and giving me messages of support
Yeah.
and help and stuff like that, which was lovely. And it was more of a shock actually after 2 years when I took it off because I hadn't felt rain or wind on my face for 2 years. And
So this mask was on you permanently?
yes, I was actually told by the surgeon I could wear it for 23 hours a day. And I thought, why would I take it off for one day? And I saved a fortune in makeup because I just had this mask on. And, but the really weird thing was the day I took it off, um, Trevor McDonald, you might not know it in your country, but he's a really well-known journalist over here.
Hmm.
He and his crew were with me because they wanted to film me taking the mask off.
Oh, wow.
And we went for a little walk in my village together, and it was started spitting with rain. Well, John, I shot about 3 foot up in the air because I wasn't used to it. I was going, oh my God, what's that? So that took a
Wow.
bit of getting used to. But again, your body really adapts quickly. And I never recovered fully from all my injuries. For example, my hands, they're grafted. I had to have the tips amputated, the nails taken off, that sort of thing. But this hand, my right hand, I call it my Tourette's hand because I have no feeling in it. And although I
Oh.
can move it hasn't got the full range.
Uh-huh.
Um, it does things without my brain telling it to. So I've always said to people, do not sit on this side of me in a restaurant because the likelihood is
I may
you'll
slap
have
you.
food, you're going to have food flung at you.
And then when you suddenly do this, you go, sorry, sorry,
Right.
that wasn't me, I swear.
Yeah, it's quite odd. I did get much more feeling back in my left hand, but even that's not perfect. But again, you just learn to cope. I
Yeah.
mean, my kitchen at home is full of gadgets and gizmos because I find if I can't do something because my hands are now disabled, if you like taking the top off jars or opening a
Hmm.
bottle, which people find hard with normal hands. I've got so many little gadgets to get them off or pry them off or open them up. And I've even got an onion chopper now because my family were getting really concerned watching me with no feeling in my hands chopping onions.
You chopped
They
your
imagine,
finger off. I swear I
yeah,
didn't feel it.
exactly.
What happened?
And I have been known actually in my local supermarket to be walking along and they're following behind me with a mop because I've caught my hand somewhere and it's bleeding and
Oh no.
I've not realized and they're sort of cracked but they've got used to me, they're catching up with me with plasters and stuff to try and stem the bleeding,
Yeah,
but
wow.
yeah, you have to be a little bit careful.
So, so you went through that trauma, I think I can call it that, right?
Yeah,
And I look at you now, looking at you, I would have no idea. that you were in such a horrific crash and you experienced a great big fireball burning your body and your face. What was it like? I mean, when you go, I gotta imagine there was a shock factor. I gotta, you were in a coma for almost a month. Um, what happens? I mean, when something like that happens, how do you? I want to talk about perseverance. I want to talk about not giving up. I want to talk, what did you do?
Well, I'll be perfectly frank with you. It took me 10 years to recover.
Okay.
So the first few years, it was more about the physical. So it was
Mm-hmm.
repairing what
Mm-hmm.
had been damaged. And that, I think it depends on what sort of character you are. I'm quite a practical person.
Mm-hmm.
So I can very quickly think with anything, is there something I can do about it? Can I change the situation I'm in? If the answer is no, I then go, right, what do I do from here? And
Right.
I can do that in seconds. Um, and
That's
I
a
think
very
that
practical
helped.
ability.
It's saved my bacon quite a few times, I have to
Wow.
admit. Um, but yet being able to switch that quickly,
Yeah.
it was, I then went, okay, my hands aren't working. I need to focus on my hands. And I almost became tunnel visioned about getting my hands moving again.
Mm.
Same with the face, because I had to have lots of surgeries on my face and it was painful,
Mm.
and the mask. I thought to myself, okay, I can't change the situation, therefore I'll get on with it and I'll do as I'm told by my doctors. I won't argue, which is very unusual for me. Um, so that took in total, I reckon, getting on for 4 years, just to get myself physically to where I'm happy with
Wow.
my physical. Um, and even then, because medical science moves along all the time, they kept saying there are new improvements and there's new lasers where we could try this and we can try. And I said to them after 4 years, no, you know what? I've got to the stage where I'm happy with what I've got. I am sick and tired of having operations. Please
Yeah.
leave me alone. So I walked away from it. But then I think that's when the real problem started, because that's when the mental side kicked in
Uh,
and it began to assess. And bear in mind, this is 4 years after the event.
mhm.
I've done a lot of campaigning, as I said, nationally to get railways safer. We were coming to the tail end of that, and suddenly my brain went, okay, you've lost your previous life. There is nothing you can salvage from that. You can't go back to it. You can't become what you are. I used to be a financial advisor
Mhm.
and I had my own company and I was trading in London, all that sort of stuff. And there were two things that spurred me on from there. One was actually during the crash, my what I thought was my final thought. And
Mhm.
this I do share with people. As it was happening and I thought I was going to die, my final thought was it's not been worth it. And I meant my life up until that point.
It's not been your life. Your final thought at that time was your life hasn't been worth it.
Yeah, because I was a businesswoman. I was making a lot of money. I did not have time for family. I did not have time for friends. You realize all in that split second, you can't take the money with you, can you? So, and
Wow.
I almost made a promise to myself then, I will never, ever be in this position again. So, my promise to myself while I was in hospital was, next time I'm facing death, I want to be able to turn around, look back at my life by then and say, that was fun and I made a difference.
Wow.
That's
I
exactly.
don't, I don't want to sound sensationalist or anything like that, but what a realization to come to.
Yeah.
And this may sound terrible, but in a lot of ways, what a gift,
I
right?
take it as a gift. It
Do
is
you
a gift.
really? Okay,
Yeah.
so you weren't. Thank you, because you're not offended by me saying
No,
that.
not at
But
all.
for you to have a moment that says, wasn't worth it. And then for you to be able to think about that and say, I'm going to make it worth it
Yeah,
when this happens again, and it's going to happen again. I mean, you
yeah.
can't avoid it, right? I mean, we're all going to go through it, right?
At some point or the other, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, not the same way, but the same. But it's going to be a process, um, and being able to look back on your life and be able to say, yeah, it was worth it. I think
Yeah,
that's really important.
yeah.
I think that's really important.
I'd like, and it's very easy actually, John, as the years have gone past, life is what it is. Like modern life is fast, it's furious, it's changing all the time.
It's not
There's
fair.
there's other traumas that happen that aren't quite so dramatic as a train crash, but divorce, mortgages, losing jobs. I mean, there's all sorts that goes on to people. And I'm always sat there thinking, this life is designed to almost suck you back in, to take you back to that point where you're going, I need money, I need wealth, I need all the trappings, and blah, blah, blah. Every time I catch myself sort of slipping back into that, I then remind myself, no, that's not the path you've chosen.
Yeah, yeah.
You said you want to have fun and you want to be, make your life worthwhile. So I've learned as well that trying to create this better life, it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be perfect.
That
It's going to
is,
be messy.
yeah, yeah, it's going to be messy. Nobody's perfect. No life is perfect.
No,
But I mean, and what I think about are all these stories I hear about, of people who are in their deathbeds and they're thinking back on their life, and a lot of people have regrets.
yeah,
And I remember hearing about Steve Jobs, and here's this man who created one of the greatest companies in history, one of the greatest influencers in history. And when he was dying, he said, "I missed it. I
yeah,
missed it." I mean, paraphrasing, obviously. I missed it. He had a daughter he never spent time with. He didn't spend time. His whole life was about the things that you just talked about, right?
yeah.
And nothing ever happened to him, like unfortunately happened to you, um, that got him to change his path.
No, but I mean, he still, because I mean, he died an untimely death.
Yeah.
Um, so it would have been possible for him to make, but I think from when we're born, the whole system, the whole social system that we all live in, irrespective of the country, we are conditioned that way.
Yeah.
Everything forces us down routes where we're
Yep.
supposed to behave in a certain way,
Yep.
act in a certain way, want to achieve certain things. And breaking out of that, I've always described it as almost I was living my life in very much black and white with bits of grey.
Hmm.
And after the train crash, it suddenly became Technicolor.
That's awesome.
Then, yeah, I suddenly realized actually life is how, or life can be how I want to design it.
Yes. That is amazing. You know what you just described was The Wizard of Oz, right?
Yeah, a
When
bit
what
like that.
right?
Yeah.
When the movie starts off in black and white, and then when the house lands from the tornado in the land of Oz or whatever, and she opens the door, all of a sudden everything's in color. Everything's in color.
Yeah.
And that's what I just imagined was your experience. That is
Yeah.
that's
And
really cool.
I very much, I mean, that's why, when you said to me when we first um, started this interview, and before you started recording, you said to me, so why, what are you hoping to get out of this? And I said, do you know what? I just like meeting people because I
Yeah.
do. I
Yeah.
genuinely do. And I like to think, even though I'm the one that's chatting about my experiences, and even though you're behind a screen, um, I'm still getting a vibe off you. And I know what, I know I'm getting a vibe as to what sort of person you are and what your likes might be and what you don't like and all that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
And it's not as good as meeting somebody in person, of course.
Sure. Sure.
But at the same time, I think this is where we make all those interconnections.
We do.
And the interconnections can, because I mean, there's been podcasts I've been on in the past, where very occasionally we still talk. We're not doing podcasts anymore, but we still catch up and have a little natter to
Yeah.
see how we're
Yeah, of
doing.
course. Yeah. Yeah. And in this case, folks are learning from you, and you said something just a minute or two ago. You said that you're now designing your life,
Yeah,
right? When you find yourself getting caught up in the rat race. And I call the rat race living by other people's expectations,
yeah.
right? Living by society's expectations, your parents' expectations, your friends' expectations. I mean, everybody's got expectations of who you should be. And a lot of times it isn't until people, get to I call, m- what do they call it? A middle age crisis or whatever,
Midlife
right?
crisis.
Midlife crisis. Thank you. Midlife crisis, right? I think, and at least as I look back on my life, that was a moment when I went, wait a minute, what am I doing?
Yeah.
It's like what you went through. It's like I've achieved the success that everybody told me I needed to achieve. I lived the life that everybody expected of me, but I'm not happy,
Mm.
right? And and so talk about designing your life because I think that's really, really important.
It is. I think
And that you've first that you chose to design your life,
well, I had nothing.
right? Okay, okay, well there you okay, start there.
It it had been sort of ripped up in front of me, so I didn't have
Wow.
anything to do. Um, yeah, again, it came down to personality. I'm not a woman, I'm not a shopper. I can't sit around watching TV. It does my head in.
Hmm.
That's a very British expression, does my head in. Um, it's yeah, so I need some purpose to my life. I need to be doing things. So I actually, do you remember the old flip charts?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I
Yeah, do
still
you
use
remember?
them.
So do I.
Yeah. I also use a fax
Because
machine.
I got my big pen out and my flip chart, and I started working out, okay, I don't know what my purpose is anymore. So I better start working that out. And I developed this whole process of thinking, okay, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Who do I know? How am I connected? What sort of life would I like? Do I like art? Do I like music? It was asking myself a lot of questions. And then this was the hardest bit. I spent a whole day on this, and this process took about a month to do. I went inside myself and had to admit to myself my worst traits,
Okay.
to really be brutally honest with myself, not to beat myself up about it because it's part of my makeup, but to appreciate that I have bad bits as well as good bits.
Hmm.
I think overall my good bits outweigh my bad bits, but
We
it
all
has
hope.
it has made me do things such as I'll give you a perfect example. If I now upset somebody by inadvertently saying something or doing something, I'm very quick to apologize now, which I wouldn't have done before. I will seek them out. I mean, you leave it a day, you don't want to apologize straight away because it sounds insincere. Once you've honestly sat down and thought about it and thought, actually, I could have handled that differently, or I was incorrect, I shouldn't have done that. I think the bigger person, and I think this is where I've turned one of my bad traits into a better trait, is I will then go up to them and I'll be very honest and say, you were completely in the right, I was in the wrong, and I just want to apologize. If you accept it, great, we can move on. If you don't accept it, I will perfectly understand.
And why? Why you said you didn't do that before, but you do that now, and that was
Yeah,
one of the one. Why did you decide to change that?
because I think there is so much that hurts us in the world. There is so much, well, I suppose reading news reports and stuff, you hear this all the time, but and when you look through social media, just anything. People are being nasty to people. And I
Oh,
think there's
terrible.
so much nastiness out there that a bit of genuine, just somebody being genuine and saying, look, oops, I made a mistake. I'm really sorry. I'm not perfect. How do we get past this? I think people actually appreciate that more than
Totally.
there's too many people around us, your politicians, our politicians, that are so good at teaching us deny everything. Wasn't me, I didn't do it, all that sort of stuff. I think that almost filters through to us. Whereas if we were just honest and went, oops, yeah, that was wrong, made a bit of balls up there, I bet I'll change. Um, and it takes stress away.
Doesn't it though?
Yeah,
And,
I think
and and
so.
and you're not talking about the other person's stress. It takes away
Yeah,
your stress
yeah,
when you apologize and you
yeah,
mean it, right? And you're
yeah,
sincere about it. Talk about that just for a sec. How does that
yeah.
work?
I think it's because deep down we're all decent people.
Yeah.
And I don't think we want to hurt people intentionally or unintentionally. I
Yeah.
mean, unless you're a psychopath, I think they might have a different view on things.
But
Um,
generally speaking,
but generally speaking, yeah, I think we're all decent human beings. Um, and I think it's a relief because we're always told deny, deny, deny. It's a relief to just be able to go, "Blah, I'm
yeah.
sorry," and genuinely mean it. So I think that's where the release of the stress. Plus, you learn. It's no good repeating that mistake again with somebody else because then you haven't learned anything. But if you can then carry a little nugget of a lesson, you've also learned something from that experience, even though you were the one that was in the wrong. And I
Yeah.
think that's valuable.
You know, I want to refer back for my audience who's been listening to me. Um, you know, I've been my career was about 40 years in high technology, and so I started, during the mainframe years, and then went to enterprise computing, then it went to PCs, then the internet, then you had mobile computing and social media, e-commerce, and over all those new generations of technology, I tell people we got really, really smart and we got really connected. But two things happened. The more we got connected, the more disconnected we became with people,
Yeah,
right? And the other part is that we really got smart. We got so smart we forgot our heart. And what I believe what we're in the midst of right now is kind of a
yeah.
renaissance of heart because
I think I'd like to
right?
think so.
And as technology moves forward and technology takes over for the quote unquote intelligence parts of what we do, what's left? It's our humanity. It's our humanity, right? It's going to be our humanity that survives this. I mean, at some point in time, whether it be 5 or 10 years from now, we're gonna go through massive, massive changes, and the end of it is going to be beautiful. It's going to be amazing. The question is, what's going to happen between now and then?
Yeah.
Right? And I call that the messy middle. But I want to refer back, folks, to what you said, because, I mean, saying you're sorry and sometimes it takes courage to say you're sorry,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because you're admitting you're wrong.
Do you ever, when sometimes if you've been like quite nasty to somebody by accident, or well, no, when you're being nasty to somebody, let's be honest, um, I get really hot and sweaty when
Uh-huh.
I'm going to apologize, and I get quite fearful because
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they're going to react.
Right.
Um, Even though I've prepared for either their forgiveness or they're sort of shutting the door in my face and telling me to go forth and multiply, um, I get really anxious just to start off with. So yes, I agree with you. It takes courage to do it
It
for
does
sure.
take courage and it takes courage to do good. That's what we're talking about, right? You want to apologize. That's a good thing, right?
Oh
Sometimes
well,
it's
yeah,
hard to,
I think anything that's positive to the human race is blooming hard.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah. We talk about saying you're sorry, but the flip side of that is forgiveness,
Yeah,
right? It's really hard to forgive people sometimes, right? And that's the flip side. And maybe perhaps that's part of the reason why, your hands would get clammy and you get all sweaty, getting ready to apologize because, I mean, we've all faced it. People that say they can't forgive you or whatever. But the other part to that is that that's their burden to carry.
yeah,
If they
you're right.
decide to withhold that forgiveness,
Yeah,
that's not a burden you have to carry anymore.
no,
So
no.
it's wow. So okay. So back to your experience. So you were going through the mental, the psychological, the emotional part of your recovery. And that's a scary part. And I want to ask you though,
Mm.
you said that you had to get through your physical recovery first. It took you 4 years, and then your mental recovery seemed to kick in.
Yeah.
Why couldn't it happen at the same time? Did one have to happen first in order for you to be able to manage the other?
I think I think our brains are very clever.
This is true.
Um, in as much as they sometimes do stuff that we're not even aware of.
Totally.
So, for example, after the train crash, I was being taken to the ambulance, and the ambulance was on a high embankment above the crash scene.
Uh-huh.
So as they were hoisting me up, I was still conscious at that time, and I could see everything. I could see the devastation. I could see bodies. Yeah.
Ugh.
My brain immediately went, don't think about it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a conscious thought. It was just almost
Right.
like my brain was going, you won't be able to cope. Don't cope.
Yes.
Don't think about it.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost like a survival instinct. So when it was coming to recovery, I cannot describe to you the pain I was going through, not just with the operations, but with the therapies and the
Oh, yeah.
getting the skin and the joints to work. And it was just so painful. I've never been able to express it properly. There was no way I could have been able to cope with the mental trauma as
Yes.
well as that.
Yes.
So my brain was just going, concentrate on one thing at a time here, Pam,
That's right.
um,
It's
and
gonna,
so on and so forth.
yeah. I didn't never went through what you went through, but I did go through a head-on car crash. And
Oh, I'm
point
sorry.
point of impact was estimated to be about 110 miles an hour.
Wow.
And it was a crazy, crazy thing because I didn't remember anything. I didn't remember anything.
Right.
And the all one moment I'm driving, the next moment someone's coming up to me saying, son, are you okay? And I'm hearing sirens coming. I didn't, it's an intersection I went through 1,000 times in my life, and I didn't
Uh-huh.
recognize where I was. And I didn't know my name. I didn't know anything. I mean, it was my brain had just literally turned me off,
Yeah.
and I didn't remember a thing. And so I went to the doctor and I said, I don't remember the crash. And he says, you know what? He says, you may never remember the crash. I said, what do you mean? He says, if your brain doesn't think you're going to be able to cope with it, it's never going to let you back in. It's never going to give you access to that memory. And I thought, weird, really? And he says, but at the same time, someday, and maybe 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, or maybe day after tomorrow, when your brain thinks that you can handle it and that
Mm.
would be productive for you to remember it, it'll bring it back. And Pam, I'll never forget. I'm driving down the road. I'm not through the same intersection, but through another intersection.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I see the car in front of me. I mean, it's just right there.
Right there.
And it
Yeah.
had the emblem,
Flashback.
had an old Plymouth Duster. It was a little tornado symbol that was part of the car. And I see it, and I remembered just my head up against the windshield, and I mean, it just all happened in
Yeah,
front of me. And this was 25 years later,
yeah. It can go like that.
right? And, um, but the thing is that when it happened, I didn't remember it. I didn't feel it. I didn't. And my doctor said when your brain sees pain coming that you're not going to be able to manage, it just turns you off like a light
Yeah,
switch. And so when you just shared what your experience and having been in so much pain and agony during your physical um, uh, uh, recovery, that that's the answer to the question, right? Your brain was telling you you can't handle anything more,
no,
right?
no. However, your
Uh-huh.
brain can also be somewhat of an enemy because when my brain allowed me to start thinking about the train crash, it brought it back like
Yeah.
full time.
Yeah.
So I was like you said, I was having flashbacks, I have nightmares because it had, like yourself, mine didn't really start until a couple of years after the train
Uh-huh.
crash. Um, it went untreated. So I wasn't
Uh,
diagnosed with PTSD until quite a bit later. So I self-medicated to start off with because I was one of these. I don't know whether this is typical of all British people, but it was all very stiff upper lip and pull yourself
well,
together,
sure. Yeah.
pull yourself together, get on with it. And one of the phrases that I've actually grown to dislike enormously is because obviously with PTSD you get depression as well, like really deep depression. Um, People coming up to me saying, "Well, if you act happy, you will be happy." And I'm going,
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
going to punch somebody who says that to
Yeah.
me next time.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, in the early days of my mental recovery, I didn't ask for help. I was self-medicating. I turned to alcohol and I turned to it in a big way, unfortunately. And I became an absolute pig. There's 1 year of my recovery that I just get so embarrassed about, but I'm always honest. I
Hmm.
say, yep, I did that. It was horrible. I was horrible to everyone around me. I really just don't recognize that person that I was. And unfortunately, it ended up in a suicide attempt. So, no, life isn't always perfect, and your brain can turn against you to start
Yeah.
off with.
Yeah.
But it was only after the suicide attempt, when I was forced to ask for help, that's when I started getting better. Because there are some fantastic psychologists and fantastic
Yeah.
psychiatrists out
Yeah.
there. There's also some bad ones.
Yep.
Um, so one piece of advice I would give to anybody who's listening who may need mental support,
Hmm.
don't always go for the first one. They may not suit you. It's just
That.
like having a relationship. You need to find one that's going to suit you. For example, one of my psychologists, they're the ones that talk a lot or to get you to talk a lot. He wanted me to cry. He said, "You've got to cry about the train crash. You've got to get the emotion out." And I'm going, "I don't cry very. I'm not a crier. I don't." And he said, "Get the anger out." And I was going, "Well, I'm not really angry because it's happened and there's nothing I can do about it. So what's the point?" Eventually, 5 psychologists later, I found this one psychologist. He's South African, and he said, "Pam, let's look towards the future. How do you want to build your future? And I will help you." And I thought that's the guy for me. And he is still my psychologist to this day.
Isn't that amazing? What great advice. What great advice. Pam, you went through five
Psychologists.
people, right? And and when you found the right one, you knew it,
Yep.
right? One of the things I tell folks, I said when you're making decisions, don't just use your brain. Use your heart, use your gut. Your heart and your gut will never fail you. I mean, if you feel it here, if it seems right here, but you don't feel it in your heart, and your heart's saying, yeah, there's just something going on here, right? Listen. Listen, it's okay. Go because you know that especially when you're dealing with a mental relationship, right? Or
Yeah.
psychological relationship and a therapist. I mean, that one could argue that that's the most one of the most important relationships you can have in your life,
Yeah,
right?
oh, I mean, he's now been my psychologist for 20 years. Um,
Wonderful.
and he's always when I'm going through a rough time, he'll be the first one I contact and say, "Can I have a session?"
Hmm.
Um, so and that because the psychiatrist is the guy that tends to dish out the tablets. Um, but within 5 years, I'd come off antidepressants because my therapy was going so well. So
Wonderful.
even though I still live with PTSD because it went undiagnosed for so long, and I always will have it, the therapy, it doesn't catch it all the time. I do have episodes, but they're very brief and there's
Hmm.
not many of them during the year. And I keep telling my family, look, treat it like flu. If I'm knocked out by PTSD 2 weeks in a year, that's 50 weeks when I'm having fun and doing things. So that's good.
Yeah,
That's
that's
good
a
from
good
my point of
thing.
view. Yeah. Um, but I truly think that's why I keep up the psychology, because I think without that, then I would need medication, whereas I don't like taking tablets.
Yeah. Well, that is sage advice of itself, right? Because a lot of people, you know, view therapy as a weakness, right? As you can't handle it, you can't deal with it yourself.
I
It's
think
not,
it's strength.
huh?
I think, do you know, one thing I remember there was he's retired now. There was an eminent psychiatrist in this country called Dr. Tim Cantifer, and I was lucky enough to have him as my psychiatrist in the end. And he's written books, and he actually states that depression is a curse of the strong because
Oh,
he hypothesizes that if somebody is a weak person, they give in to the depression, which means they get over the episodes quicker. If you're a strong person, you fight against the episodes, which makes them last longer and run deeper.
interesting. So say
Isn't
say
it?
say that again. Say that again.
His name is Dr. Tim Cantifer.
Yeah. And
As
what
I
did
said, he's retired now, but he wrote a couple of books, and one of them was called Depression is Curse of the Strong.
depression is the curse of the strong?
It's really interesting.
Wow. That makes sense.
It
It
does,
makes
doesn't it?
sense, right? It makes sense. Wow. Wow.
Because actually, one thing I've learned, even with these little episodes I have each year, I now give in to them. Even though I'm a strong person, I will shut everything down. Like I won't talk to anyone and I won't go out and I'll just watch films. I'll just watch films and
Hmm.
stuff my face on the couch and just pretend I've got flu or something because it passes quickly.
Okay.
Whereas before, because I was fighting against it, it was lasting 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there's something in what Dr.
Interesting.
Cantifer said.
Let it go
Yeah,
to a certain extent.
to a certain extent, yeah, you can't let it go too far,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah. Pam, close us out. What would you like to leave my audience with? We talked about, I mean, we talked about an incredibly challenging journey. And we talked about your recovery and we talked about your persistence and resilience. What did you learn from all that you'd like to share that
I
other folks
think,
can learn from?
well, there's two things I'd like to leave with your listeners, if I may.
Hmm.
One is there is nothing special about me. I'm just an ordinary person
Hmm.
that went through an extraordinary circumstance. So I may have learnt things a bit more vividly and quicker than most people experience if hopefully they don't go through anything too traumatic in their lives. But from that, they should learn that, yeah, keeping going, being resilient. It's not as easy as it looks, and you have to take very, very small steps in order to achieve what you want to. But at the same time, always keep your humanity, your sense of justice, your sense of wanting to care for other people as well as yourself. And I always like the visual, I always carry this around in my head a lot. If you imagine a beach, a nice sandy beach with the sea lapping in, and you sometimes see where you've walked and your footsteps are there, and then the surf comes up and gently washes away your footsteps so that it's pristine beach again. That's how we should be living our lives.
Ooh,
That's my sort of visual that I carry around with me. Gentle but quiet, and we leave a pristine beach behind.
that's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. That is a really nice way to leave us with something that we can that we can use. That's really
Oh, I'm
cool. That's
glad.
really
Thank
cool.
you.
That's really cool. You know, one thing that we didn't get to talk about. In fact, let's just real quick. Let's just real
Go.
quick. So, all this happened to you, and you could have covered yourself up. You could have blamed the world. You could have closed yourself up into your little cocoon. But you decided to get out and do something. And you had mentioned briefly about how you went and from your experience, you went out and tried to make a difference.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, and tell us what led you to do that.
Okay. Well, I'll try to do it as briefly as I can, but um, it was it was after the train crash and I come out of hospital. I then discovered over quite a few avenues what had happened on the day.
Hmm.
And I then discovered it was the government and the rail industry in this country putting profits before passenger
Hmm.
safety. I decided I have a very strong sense of moral justice. So I went, that is not right. And we'd had train crashes before ours, not as bad, but they had happened. And I thought they were rectifying the safety problems, but they hadn't at all. They were just ignoring them. So I thought the only way to get them to do anything is to hold them to account. So myself and my fellow survivors banded together. I got a group of us together because we did not want what had happened to us ever happening to somebody else.
Right.
That we'd seen the devastation to us, our families, our relatives, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, and again, I'm an ordinary person. Nobody told me I could take on the government and the rail industry, but I went for it. I thought to myself, I've got nothing to lose here. Um, Plus the media, because of the plastic mask and everything, the media did adopt me. So they were sort of backing me from behind the scenes, which was helpful, extremely
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So I took on the government and I took on the rail industry. It took 5 years to get them to keep all their promises of making the railways safer. But I won. And that's what makes the UK rail system one of the safest in Europe.
Amazing.
However,
Uh-huh.
when I dropped out of the public eye, I didn't drop out of the rail industry. Even to this day, I still talk to the bigwigs up in all the rail companies, and they're still frightened of me.
Wow. So this is a story of an ordinary woman having something extraordinary happen to her and doing extraordinary things because of it. That is amazing.
Oh,
That is
thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
Pam, listen, if folks want to learn more about you, what's the best way?
Probably jump on my website,
Okay,
uh, which is just pamwarren.co.uk. And there is a contact form on there, and I always answer. I may not answer straight away because I do these days. My new life consists of me doing about 12 different projects all at the same time and spinning plates. I love it. I hate being bored.
good for you.
So I can't always reply straight away, but I always get back to people, um,
Okay.
and try to help where I can.
And that website is Pam Warren at,
Dot
sorry, pamwarren.co.uk.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Pam, this has been wonderful.
Thank you, Tom.
Congratulations on all your successes. Congratulations on your recovery,
I'm
your
not done
survival.
yet.
No, okay. Well, yeah, right. Right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And one could argue that recovery is a lifelong journey from anything. Yeah. And so this has been a lot of fun. You've inspired me. I'm sure lots of people out there are going to be inspired by your story. So thank you for joining us. Any last words?
No, just to wish your listeners all the best and continue finding their better.
Yeah, wonderful. Pam, I love you. God bless you. Thank you for joining me. Everybody, listen, I love you. God bless you. Share this because there's folks in your life who would appreciate hearing about Pam's story, her journey, and her experiences. Okay, and we'll see you next time. Bye.